Sports with Sean Caravilles.
So Chris Froome has won his 4th Tour de France title and 3rd in a row. Here's BBC 5 Live.
The Tour de France.
I don't want to start this on a somber note. I promised I wouldn't cry. Everyone just hold it together, okay? Hold it together. But this is the final bespoke at the Tour de France 2017. Okay, that silence says everything. Because this is it. We've had the final stage. Paris has happened. We are currently in a secret location I can't tell you about. Above the rooftops, if you are watching this on Facebook Live, if you listen to it, it doesn't really work for you. But behind us is the Sacré-Cœur. And what we thought we'd do for the final show is just get together.
That's a bit of a clue about where we are.
Well, it does really give it away, yeah. It's still secret, though. You could be in many locations. What we thought we'd do is get together the best lineup of cycling brains we could find in Paris today. But they were busy. So instead, we've got Michael Hutchinson, who is a time trialist, owns an altitude tent.
You always introduce me by mentioning
I do.
that.
Do you still have it?
I still have my altitude tent, but I don't use it, but I keep it just in case.
Just in case you want to be at altitude. We've got Nick Bull, who is a cycling journalist.
I don't know an altitude tent, sadly.
Do you not? Would you like one?
I know who to get one from.
Yeah,
which
you
is good.
do. We have Rob Hales. Have you ever been at altitude?
I have been in an altitude tent. I am glad I do not own one. I have also been to altitude, and I'm glad I do not live there.
And we have Simon Brotherton, who is altitudinous.
Thank you.
Surely he's attitude rather than altitude.
There you go. So here we are then, the final stage. I did try and work out earlier on. I think we've done something like 400,000 miles around France. We've seen a lot of racing. We've seen people kicked out of the Tour de France. We've seen stages won. We've seen Chris Froome take his 4th Tour de France. In your eyes, and you've done this, is this 21?
21,
This is 21. How's this Tour de France been?
I think maybe we need a couple of weeks to just move away from it and then look back at the tour. I don't think it's been one of the great tours. They tried to devise a route that would keep things tight until the end, and I think they certainly did that. Whether they did that because of the nature of the route or whether it was just the fact the riders were a little bit cautious, I'm not too sure. Maybe a bit of both. The margins weren't great in the end. The thing that I found really interesting about it, OJ, was that they deliberately put in the bare minimum of time trialling this year. Only 36.5 kilometres in a route of, 3,500. And there were about 1,400 kilometres of mountainous stages. And actually there were about 20 seconds between the top 3 in the mountains. And yet Chris Froome won by nearly a minute over Rigoberto Urán and by 2 minutes 20 over Bardet, and all that, the time difference really came in that very small fraction of the Tour de France in those individual time trial kilometres.
So I guess at this point, Rob, when we're looking at it, was it a good course or a bad course this year?
I think it was certainly a new course. It was a little bit novel. We had the 100-kilometre stage, 104k, which
that
I
was
thought
great.
That
was brilliant.
That was brilliant. Whenever they put one of those in, I think they should put one a week in. That would be, for me, that would be really good. The long sprint stages, we need those, but they were exceptionally long.
And they were quite dull, weren't they?
They were extremely dull. They all ended well, but they're slow burners. Was it a great course?
Why do the long stage then? You know it's going to end in a sprint.
Well, they have to. Yeah, they have to have them. Generally the tour is kind of the same distance each year. So I mean that would be the problem. If you did have 2, potentially 300-ish K stages, you would then have to load up on some of the other stages.
Give the GC guy kind of a day off. They sit in the bunch, they have a day off, they can't do it every day. It's still supposed to be a Tour of France. I mean, you could make every stage 60 kilometres, run it up a mountain, but it wouldn't be the Tour de France. The Tour de France is about riding 3,500 kilometres. That's what it is.
But why does it have to be that?
Well, because it's meant to be a test of endurance as much as anything else. You know, when you think about it, the people that set up the Tour de France in the first place, one of their aims was to make it so difficult that their ultimate aim might be to only have one man finishing. It was almost last man standing. It was supposed to be brutal.
That was Henri de Grange said his ideal tour was one that one man could finish. It is supposed to be hard, so you got to stick 200 kilometre stages in to make it hard.
And hard, it did make it. Can I just check, do you want the short stages because it's a short day for you? on commentary?
No, we still commentate for the same amount of time. pretty much.
right.
We've still got to come and talk to you.
Yeah, but
It's not a short day.
But the racing is from.
But
pretty
that's
much
the
from start to
highlight,
finish.
Simon.
Indeed.
You know
We've
that's the
always got
highlight.
something to look forward to at the end of the day.
We back end the best bit of your day. Sorry, Rob.
It's all right. I'm over it. No, the thing is, the racing is pretty much full on from start to finish because so many fewer of the riders are scared off. 200 odd kilometres. You know, if you go out from the word go, you know you're not going to last. So the shorter stages, it goes off like fireworks at the start.
It was brilliant, wasn't it? Now, you could be consuming this as a podcast, in which case, hey, subscribe, although there won't be any more after today. Or you could be watching it live on Facebook, in which case you can message or send us anything, and I shall try and put them to our guests. Dominic Suave, which is a great surname, says, a real great British sporting champion. Obviously, he's talking about Chris Froome there. Wrapped up his 4th Tour de France, 3 on the bounce. Is he now a cycling great?
Well, yes, without a doubt. I mean, there's only 4 guys officially. Obviously, there's the question mark about Lance Armstrong.
You said his
and the big
name!
asterisk. I'm off. Let's go and get a beer. There's only 4 guys that officially have more Tour de France wins than him. So yeah, of course,
He's the only guy
a bona fide legend.
He's the only guy that's won 4.
Indeed.
Everybody else who won 4 won 5.
And that's a great incentive for him to come back next year and join that very elite club.
It does feel like, you know, especially when you talk to him because he's so humble, but when you talk to other people, he's won 4 Tour de France and he's done them, if not in always dominant style, he's done them, if not with panache, he has done them. Is he a cycling great, do you think? Do people respect him as a cycling great?
Oh, undoubtedly he is. He has to be. You know, as the guys were saying, you know, there are only 4 riders who've won the Tour de France more times than he has. This is an event that's been going for over 100 years. You know, what he's achieved is really extraordinary. He deserves all the full credit for that. One thing I noticed this year, though, was that he didn't have the acceleration at certain points in the mountains that we've seen before. For example, Mont Ventoux, was it in 2013? Or, you know, every year there's been a point where he's ridden away from the others in the race. He wasn't able to do that this year. Whether that's an age thing or just the opposition coming up.
I think it was more to do with his condition as well. You know, he's clearly targeting the Tour of Spain this year, and I think Sky have worked out that to try and do the double and have any chance of doing it, you can't come into the Tour de France on top form. I think they've been very clever with their taper, and if anything, I think they brought him in a little bit undercooked, and I think that was evident at the La Planche de Belleville, the first summit finish.
But that was he says down to a fueling thing he hadn't eaten.
That was Périgueux.
That was Périgueux, sorry.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, maybe he hasn't accelerated away because on one of the few stages where there was a mountain he could have gone up, he had that mechanical, so he couldn't accelerate that day because he had to accelerate to actually catch them. So we have seen him do it.
No,
but
the point I thought on that day he was really impressive because in my opinion, the Tour de France was very much on the line there. That was the day that he could have lost the Tour, and that took an extraordinary effort. And I think when he had that mechanical and had to stop at the side of the road, an attack had already happened. The race was full on, and as soon as he got back on the road, he was roughly a minute behind. That was an extraordinary effort. It did help him, the fact they were about to go up a climb. Had it been on the flat in the wind, it might have been different. But it was on a climb. But even so, it took some... He knew that he had to get back on by the top of that climb. Otherwise, probably the Tour de France was done. And he was able to do it. So that was a great ride by him in that sense. But what I meant was, and I'm not criticising him for it. I'm just saying... we have seen it in the past. When he's gone for it and made an attack, he's gone away from the others.
No one can touch him.
He didn't do that this year, and it's not a criticism of him. I'm just saying that when he did accelerate in the mountains, Bardet and Uran were able to close the gap. He was able to close the gap on them too, but he didn't make the difference in the mountains this year.
I mean, would it be fair to say though that one of the marks of a real great is that they manage to come out the right side of a narrow gap when they're not at their best? I think Martina Navratilova said the question is not how do you play when you're playing well, how do you play when you're playing badly? And in this instance, it's not playing badly, but it's coming into the Tour a little bit undercooked. He used his team very intelligently, he used his own energy very intelligently, and he still squeaked out the win, despite the fact that maybe he wasn't quite the Froome he was a year or two
when
ago.
You're talking about, do we actually think that what he's done here, and this was something that I was in my mind when we were doing the preview show ahead of the Tour, basically, do we feel that he's deliberately backloaded his season so that actually the whole idea is that in an ideal world for him, he's able to carry it through to the Vuelta as well? So he's thinking as much about the Vuelta, but going into the Vuelta, hopefully carrying that form through.
Maybe. I mean, it seems a heck of a gamble to me because for Sky and for Froome and for all of cycling, the Tour is Can I say it? The Tour is the Tour. It's the big potato.
Well, because interestingly on that, I was talking to Edward Pickering, who was talking about Quintana, who has just been, he might as well have stayed in Italy for the use he's been at the Tour de France, and he was saying, Quintana's not really kicked on with his early career promise. And you think, well, hang on a second here, he's won the Vuelta, he's won the Giro, he's come second in the Tour, but he is seen not as a great rider now because he's not won the Tour de France.
He's pushed himself really hard the last couple of years, and I think he's paying for that. It's very difficult as a bike rider to replicate year on year what you do. You can't just go, that plan worked, so I'll do it again next year and next year.
He's ridden 5 consecutive Grand Tours, and while there's Lotto Soudal's Adam Hansen, who's clearly chasing the record run of riding. I think he's on his
18 in a row. He's finished Grand Tours.
You can do that if you're a domestique or a guy that gets into the breakaways, but if you want to be competitive, 2 a year is a tough ask. But to do that actually, over the course of two and a bit years, that's really difficult. And Movistar have overcooked him without any doubt.
Well, Chris Froome, he is in the yellow jersey. He took it pretty much on that time trial stage, which was yesterday down in Marseille, which feels about 3 weeks ago already, doesn't it? And there was a press conference afterwards. Now, with the press conference, you go into this big room, there's layers and layers of tables, all the journalists are in there. And when Froome walked in, everyone piles forward for this group session.
And there was only one question that he needed to be asked.
Exactly. The first thing, Chris Froome has just wrapped up his 4th Tour de France. He's now one of the cycling greats. And a Chinese journalist in the front got the first question, and he asked him, Chris Froome, hello Chris Froome, are you excited about riding the Tour of Beijing? Which was fabulous. So, down on the Champs-Élysées today, Chris Froome has just finished the Tour de France. There was only one thing that I could ask him. First question I'd love to ask you is about the Tour of Beijing, but I won't. Instead, I'll say Chris Froome, 4-time Tour de France champion. How does that sound?
Incredible feeling to ride onto the Champs-Élysées. Even after having done it 3 times previously, it doesn't diminish it at all. It's still all the same emotions are here. It's incredible, absolutely incredible.
And just talk me through that final lap, knowing that you're about to cross the line and be called a 4-time champion. What is it like?
It's definitely a huge privilege, huge honour to stand here on the Champs-Élysées. As I said in the speech, this is what, in the back of my mind for the year building up until this event, I'm thinking about the next one already, and it's just such an honour to be here and to have been supported by such a strong team as well. I've had my good days and my bad days over the last 3 weeks, but the team has just been solid throughout.
I know you're always so polite and humble, but I'm going to say this now. You're now one of the cycling greats.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the support from back home. It's really been incredible. Thanks, guys.
And put a number on it. How many Tour de France are we looking at?
It's impossible to say. I'll be grateful for everyone I can win.
Thank you. Congratulations,
Thank
mate.
you.
Chris Froome there talking to me earlier on the Champs-Élysées. Didn't answer the question about the Tour of Beijing, funnily, although he did laugh. Lots of people are sending in messages. Crispin says even Froome at 80% is still too good for the rest of the peloton. Is he too good for the rest of the peloton at 80%?
Not at 80%. I think you're talking small margins of percentages when you get to the top, and you don't have to be too far off your best to be a long way from the rest. And it just shows how good Froome has been, his team has been, but I think the result and the differences between the guys also show how very good Rigoberto Urán was with the team that he's got and the budget that they have got.
Which is nothing like Team Sky's. If you don't follow,
not at all.
Do you know in numbers the difference in the budgets?
You're talking pounds and pennies basically. It's probably 3 times.
It must be a good kind of 10 or 15 million.
The difference in the budget.
It's not still Wigan and the Manchester United.
It's sort of 35 million versus 20 million.
Yeah, that is so much money. Lots of people asking, who wins next year, do you think? Because that's going to be the interesting question, isn't it? Who wins next year?
Tom Dumoulin.
Do you think it's going to be Dumoulin?
The problem is that there's 3 factors here, which it makes it so hard to assume and guess. We don't know the route. It could be time trial heavy, it could be mountain heavy. We simply just don't know. We don't know who's going to be riding. Who's going to go to the Giro, who's not going to focus on the Vuelta, for example. Who might crash and get injured. And then there's also ultimately the teams they pick, the conditions on the day, and all the variables that the race throws up. The fact that the race finished 4 hours ago. the fact that we're kind of talking about next year's race feels a little bit premature, but actually when you look at the potential riders that could be there, it's a really mouth-watering prospect.
We can have Richie Porte back, we can have Vincenzo Nibali, we could have Tom Dumoulin, we could have Fabio Aru could be back and at it. We can have 3 or 4 riders
Simon
who really,
and Adam Yates both together.
Yates, 3 or 4 riders who weren't as big a factor in this year's race.
What about curveball and Mikel Landa? It looks like he's about to be joining Movistar as well. Could he be the leader that goes up against Chris Froome and tests Team Sky?
That would be fabulous. I mean, could you imagine that if it was Richie Porte and Mikel Landa both taking on Chris Froome? It'd be great, because there's questions coming in. I think Robert says, will Froome step aside to allow one of his stronger teammates to have a go next year?
No.
Do you not think that?
No,
okay, what if
I don't think so. I don't think he has stronger.
Yeah.
I mean, Landa is a credible rider in terms of the overall classification, but he won't be there next year. And when you look at it, Chris Froome's there, man. That was the one thing about Sky this year, wasn't it? As soon as the prospect of Landa being a contender as well, Sky were very quick to sort of squash that and to remind everybody that actually Chris Froome's our man. We're backing him 100% until that option is no longer available. They learnt that that's the way to do it. It's worked for them, and that's how they. And I don't see any reason why they wouldn't do that again next year.
And also, let's not forget Geraint Thomas. He had a great prologue in Düsseldorf, took the yellow jersey, but even then, he said, "I'm here to help Froome. My goal is to be the domestic."
Is he?
Oh, the thing is, his Grand Tour record doesn't stand up to it.
No.
Chris Froome's a 4-time Tour de France winner. Geraint Thomas has showed potential, but actually, what's his best Tour de France finish? Was it 15th or so?
2 years running. Yeah.
You can't put your eggs in that basket.
But that's not fair. Yes, he came 15th, but that was working for Chris Froome in that tour, which is obviously going to throw him down the standings.
But there's still, Chris Froome is the leader of Team Sky. He has earned that title. He's won 4 Tours de France. You don't turn up to Tour de France number 5 for Chris Froome and go, actually no, we're going to go with this guy, with somebody else.
In terms of the domestique card as well, let's not forget Chris Froome played second fiddle to Bradley Wiggins in 2012. He finished second overall and was
for a bit, apart from one stage.
He was arguably the strongest guy in that race. Had he been at any other team, he could have quite easily be here in Paris right now with 5 Tour de France titles.
Sky are here, unfortunately, not to entertain us or the public in the way that they ride, if that's how people view them as boring, which I think they're anything but, especially Chris Froome. They're here to win the races. They are here to win the races that they enter, and it's not to share the love, unfortunately, to other teammates. And all the time, the number one priority looks like Chris Froome, that he is able to do that with his proven track record. That is the way that's the way they will go.
And Froome's obviously got something, because when you think about the team that they put out there and how hard they rode for him, you've got 2 former world champions, a world time trial champion in Vasil Kirienka riding on the front, and you've got Michał Kwiatkowski, who's a star in his own right. He won one of the monuments this year, Milan-San Remo, former world road race champion, still in the prime of his career. And the effort that he put in on Chris Froome's behalf in this year's Tour de France had to be seen to be believed. So they obviously think that Froome's the man who's definitely worth riding for.
He rode himself to a standstill. Is it a waste of those riders, do you think? You've got some of the best riders in the world.
Professional bike riders.
That's what
riding
they're
for someone else.
No, because that's what they're there for. That's their job.
It's a shame that we'll never see Kwiatkowski, I guess, unless he moves on in a couple of years' time. We'll never see him doing his own thing. We'll see him riding for someone else.
But he's not going to win the Tour anyway. So
I think the problem is that history has shown in cycling that great domestiques don't always make great leaders. Look at Mark Renshaw. He's pretty. For about 4 or 5 years, he was the best lead-out man in the world to Mark Cavendish. He goes to become a number 1 sprinter at Team Blanco around 2012, 2013 time. He won about 6 races, and they were not the big races. He didn't win in the Grand Tour stage. Mark Cavendish was still, taking the big victories. There's a real difference. Some people can cope with the pressure, some people can't. And actually, if Landa moves on from Sky to Movistar, and also Nievi, we believe he's going from Sky to Orica Greenidge, it'll be interesting to see how they react to that.
But that's my point, though. It's one step on with some of the riders on Sky. You've got great riders acting as super domestiques. That's the difference. That's what they've got over the other teams here at the Tour de France.
It's a team, fundamentally. And you put together a star team, it's going to have people in it who you're always going to look and go, well, he's the strongest guy in the team. And there were points where Landa looked like the strongest guy in the team, and a point where Kwiatkowski looked like the strongest guy in the team. But ultimately, they're stopping short of the mountaintop.
And the thing is, sorry, Michael, I just say that the thing is that you know that getting riders who are that good to all sing off the same sheet and to all pull in the same direction is not an easy thing, and that clearly has happened. They've done it, haven't they?
And it says a lot for what they think of Chris Froome, that they are prepared. And the team were 4 square behind Chris Froome the whole way through. There never really were any, not like 2012 with Froome and Wiggins, and there never any rumblings, never any arguments. They were always you know.
I
pointing in the
think
same direction.
with Chris, it's not just what he does on the bike. He obviously delivers, and they're happy to commit everything to him, because as long as he can stay upright, it looks like at least 4 times he's been able to deliver and repay that. It's the way he's off the bike as well, I think,
he's
around
polite,
the
and he's
team,
professional,
and everybody's happy to do that. You hear stories of Buhani, the way he treats his teammates. It's no wonder it doesn't go that well.
I think you were asked this question as one of our lights goes off, Redders. Oh, it's come back on. Thank you, Redders. He shook his fist at it. I mean, I think you were asked this question when doing some media interviews. Is the lack of star appeal about Chris Froome, the fact that he is so polite and he is so unassuming, people take that the wrong way, don't they?
I think they do, and I think when you're so good as an athlete, we see it so often. It doesn't matter whether it's a bike rider or what it is. Certain tennis players, I'm sure it happens in all sports. They're so good on their field of what they do, that as soon as a camera and a microphone is put in front of them, you expect them to be exactly the same as that. And I'm
sorry, there's a light.
I can't concentrate on what I'm.
Yeah, it's like a really lazy.
You understand what I'm saying? Yeah.
I think actually with Froome is that obviously a lot of people compare him to Bradley Wiggins, and Bradley Wiggins comes across as the lad, the guy you can have banter with, for want of a better term. I think people see Bradley Wiggins as the guy you go down the pub with and have a few pints. Chris Froome is perhaps the guy that you invite to a dinner party with his missus. Really, he's a lot more.
Lovely way of looking at it.
I appreciate that. Let's write that one down. That was a good one. But I think that's the way that the people see it, and that may be kind of almost Froome's weakness in a way. Actually, that the fact that he's kind of too nice.
There's no edge to him.
Wow, Bradley Wiggins.
Until he gets on the bike, and then he wants to absolutely destroy you.
And are you just talking about Bradley Wiggins, the rower, by the way, just to check? Is he still going to be a rower? What happened to that?
It's still out there.
We haven't heard anything, obviously, since the day before the Tour de France, that's what he announced.
If you can hear rain coming down, it's because we are actually in the middle of a rainstorm in Paris right now. Funnily enough, we're actually under a gazebo, which is starting to bow with the water on it. And I think Rob, I think you're in prime position to get a dunking
again
at some point. So Dave Brailsford, yesterday I introduced him that he was being interviewed by a tall, handsome guy, thinking it was me doing the interview, and it was actually you, Nick Bull.
You're a charmer.
I know, it was an accident, I didn't mean to say it. So anyway, let's hear from him. This is the man who put together Team Sky, who's had an interesting 12 months. He was talking to Nick Bull a little bit earlier on.
Dave, a 5th Tour de France title in 6 years. Does that winning feeling ever get old?
Oh, no. No, it doesn't, no. And funnily enough, I think this is probably I'd probably say this is the greatest victory I've been involved in, and definitely the most satisfying.
What impressed you the most about Chris's performance over the 3 weeks?
Well, this has been without doubt the most intense Grand Tour we've been involved in, and the closest, and it required an immense amount of concentration. I think normally you've got these times in a Grand Tour you really, really have to focus and concentrate, and they can switch off a little bit for a while, but this one's it's been on all the way through, and I think that it's more mental than physical, I think, which has stood him apart and helped him win this race this year.
You've worked with some fine athletes in your time. Is he the best that you've ever come across?
Yes, I'd say certainly in this environment, and his tenacity and his ability to keep on performing across all conditions, actually, and his mental resilience is second to none.
Dave Brailsford there. I mean, there's a massive statement there. He calls Chris Froome the best person, the best athlete he's ever come across. Did he work with you, Rob?
He's worked with Rob Hales, doesn't he, as well?
Well, that just shows how good he really is. The thing is, there's a few things to look at. There's how good the rider is, what kind of they've got inbuilt from birth, and then it's what you do with it. So it's your ability, and it's the way you apply it. Are they coachable? Are they trainable? Do they do as they're told? Do they give you good feedback? It's not just about having a great coach who tells you what to do and you just go and blindly do it. It's always a two-way traffic. And I think if you talk to, because he was here at the UCI, that was water dripping from the roof, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. It's getting so close to you.
I've totally lost my train of thought. Right, so he was at the UCI centre, and the coach there just said, in terms of his engine, his raw ability on the rig, he was so impressive, and what he has had to do is actually learn how to race and deliver it. I mean, he was pretty shocking on the bike.
I think that's one of the reasons why Sky took a punt on him when they left Barlow World at the end of 2009 and joined Team Sky for their maiden season in 2010 as well, because the data was there, but something wasn't quite right. I mean, you mentioned the position, and that was obviously clearly a factor as well. And for the first couple of years at Team Sky, he had the he had the parasite infection as well, which obviously clearly had a big impact on his physical strength and performance.
Put a number. Well, I asked this question yesterday when we were in the car park in Marseille that smelt of urine after you guys had headed off to Paris. Put a number on it. How many I've got to get this right. Tours de France. That's the right way of pronouncing, isn't it?
Correct.
Because it's not Tour de France. It's
Tour de France.
Tours de France has he won. How many do you think he will win by the end of his career? Is it 4 right now? I'll let you know what Nick said. You said.
I said 5.
You said 5.
I think there's no reason to think that he doesn't have another tour in him. Obviously, it was closer this year. Riders are coming through. Things change. So, but there's no reason to think that he hasn't got a good chance of winning another one.
You say 5.
Well, he might win more, but I'd say he's got every chance of equaling the.
Come on, put a number on it.
I think 5.
5, Rob.
Sensible man.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you see all the other riders around, Rigoberto Urán has come right up, but there's no saying that is going to happen
He's been
again.
around for years,
Yeah, he has.
Especially Bardet, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And Rigoberto Urán came to the Tour to win it this year. That was the whole plan. They threw everything they had at it this year, and he still came up short. So
Bardet, he's kind of at a level. He should improve. He's got the capability of improving. His time trialling needs to have a word with you, because I think he just needs to ride a time trial bike a little bit more than just the time trial.
Age is on his side as well, isn't he?
I mean, he did say he doesn't ride a time trial bike because he finds it boring, and that is not how you win the Tour de France. You win the Tour de France by doing what's boring, if that's what's necessary.
Or to in favour with you, I'm sure.
Well, indeed.
but that's the thing that is in Chris Froome's favour, is the fact that he's been there, he's done it, he knows. This year was a real test, and he came up. Only just, but he came up on top.
So how many?
5.
You're saying 5. Nick said 5.
That was a real politician's answer there from Rob, wasn't it?
It was, wasn't it? So Michael,
I've got to say something other than 5.
no, you can say 5.
I'm nearly tempted to say 4.
You don't think another one in him?
Controversial. I don't know. I look at it. I mean, we were nearly here a few minutes ago. It depends on next year's course. It depends who turns up next year. He's under a lot of pressure to win it next year, or to get 4 in a row. Tom Dumoulin comes to ride the Tour, Richie Porte comes to ride the Tour, Nibali to ride the Tour. Suddenly you've got, there could be even less time trialling in the Tour. There's nothing to say that they couldn't just put 1 20-kilometre time trial at the end, and suddenly it's a different game again.
Bardet would be very, very happy with that, wouldn't he?
And
he
Bardet,
would.
yeah.
I tell you, the one thing we shouldn't forget is that, because he's won 4, it's so hard just to win 1. And so many stars have to align for you just to win 1, that it's asking an awful lot to have won the number that he has won. Never mind anymore. We can't take it for granted that he'll win another
somebody wins. He's just won 4 tours. And what a weird guy. Oh, what, is he going to win 5? 6? Yeah. He's only won 4.
We always want more. It's never good enough.
You mentioned the people that win one tour. There's so many great riders over the course of cycling history that never won the yellow jersey in Paris.
And it's amazing. I'm going to say he's going to win 6. Because I don't think he was the strongest rider at the Tour this year, but I think he had the strongest team and they had the best tactics. Because Team Sky raced this year, didn't they? They really raced, and they got the yellow jersey back. So I think next year they'll change the course. The French ASO, which is a French organisation that wants a Frenchman to win it, I think they'll try and beat Froome, and I think Sky will be one step ahead of that. And then I think they'll Hail Mary it the year after, and he'll win that, and that'll be Froome out. That's my thoughts on it.
I'm glad you got a plan, OJ.
I have got a plan. So, Chris Froome, if you've heard that, if you'd like to put that into practice for me, that'd be great. A message came in about Luke Rowe. Now, from Adam, says Luke Rowe is the unsung hero.
He was the worst rider in the Tour de France.
Why? He wasn't the Lantern Rouge, was he, in the end? I don't think was he actually last?
Yeah,
pretty sure
someone told me it changed on the line.
No. You can't lose.
Today?
Yeah.
Well,
somebody would have had to have lost about 8 minutes with going in Paris.
Okay.
So
All right,
okay, so he was the second worst.
The Lantern Beige.
He was. No, Luke is.
Just to say, for anyone's watching who's now jumping up and down, you were being ironic.
Yes, sorry, yes.
You didn't actually mean that.
He was Lantern Rouge. Time for a rider like Luke Rowe and many others. Believe it or not, matters not. It doesn't matter as long as.
But he was the unsung hero, wasn't he?
He at the moment where Chris Froome had his problem, stage 15, it was Luke Rowe who took control of the team. There was a little bit of panic within the team. funnily enough, and it was Luke he is the road captain, and he decided what was going to happen, who was to do what, and he took control. He crashed on the first road stage, and we only found out yesterday he broke
a rib.
On stage 2.
Yes, and so he has got himself through that. He is one of those guys who you see him on the front for a little bit and then he goes, but he does an awful lot in there. And yeah, certainly he is one of the key riders in the squad. You look at him on general classification, you go, oh well.
But a road captain like that is invaluable, you know, for someone when it's really kicking off on the road and there's a major crisis like there was for a minute or two when Chris Froome had that mechanical issue. When you've got someone like that who can take control, even to the point of taking over from the director in the car and saying, right, everybody shut up, I'm in charge here, I know what's going on.
But in terms of the injury, a lot of the riders at the Tour de France, they'll get injured in the first week or so and they'll basically just ride to pedal to get to Paris. You know, it becomes it's all about survival. Luke Rowe doesn't really have that luxury. He's part of Team Sky, he's the road captain, he's an integral part of that setup, and basically he's had to flog himself day after day after day after day to make sure he can have gave everything for Chris Froome, and he's done it. I think he's been an absolute star this year.
Romain Bardet, let's not talk anymore about him, but there has been, every time we've said his name, there's a certain song that has sprung to mind. Does everyone know the song that comes up?
Yeah, do you know the song? Remind us.
Oh, okay then. So, Romain Bardet, every time we've heard his name, we have thought of this song.
Romain Bardet. Romain Bardet.
Romain Bardet there. Now let's...
That was a masterpiece.
It was great. Thank you very much. We've spent 3 weeks thinking if we should do it, but hey, it's the last night, so...
3 weeks and £3.
Yeah, that budget's all gone for
I know,
dinner,
we've absolutely rinsed it. Sorry guys, we're going to have to eat those chips that I can't name because we're on the BBC. There's another Englishman who's done very well this Tour de France, after his brother did very well last year.
Yeah, Simon Yates finished 7th overall and won the white jersey as the best young rider in the Tour, and did it all 12 months after his brother Adam had won the jersey as well. So, and I think that, you know, it was a great performance from him. When the riders were up in the mountains, he was basically there. He lost a couple of minutes. He couldn't quite hold the wheels of the yellow jersey group in the last kilometre or so on the Galibier, so he lost a bit of time there. So, you know, obviously he was pretty tired and he was on the limit, but I think most of the time he was right up there. He's a young rider. Potentially there's more to come from him. Top class ride. Also Dan Martin finishing in 6th. That's the best ride by an Irish cyclist in the Tour de France for 30 years since Stephen Roche won the race in 1987.
30th anniversary. And I loved Dan's racing actually this year. I thought he was attacking. He was not afraid to sort of take it to Chris Froome and take it to Team Sky. Ultimately, most of those attacks didn't quite come off. It was a little bit like last year. He sort of did the same thing.
No regrets though from him.
But no regrets. There's nothing you can look at and say, well, I didn't do what I could have done when I could have done it. The great shame there was that he got caught up in the Richie Porte crash, because that really, you know, hamstrung him for most of the second half of the Tour, and I'd love to have seen him do the Tour as he could have been.
I think what's important to remember about Simon Yates is that he's barely in his 20s, so he's got time on his side if he wants to become a Grand Tour contender.
Not barely in his 20s. What is he?
He's 25.
25. That's barely into his 20s.
25 in August.
That's like saying Rob's barely into his 50s. How old are you?
44.
Exactly.
I was being diplomatic. He's still very young in terms of the kind of the lifespan of a Grand Tour contender. He's very early on.
Both he and his brother got one more year in white jersey.
They've got the peak years for that, so that's not a problem at all. And also, I think the most importantly for him, he came 6th in the Tour of Spain last year, and he's basically backed up that ride. So we know that the Tour of Spain ride last year is not a fluke. He can compete with the best, and actually, in terms of minutes, you know, we're talking between him and the podium. It's not that much actually. Okay, in cycling terms, it might seem like a very big marginal gain to get, but actually, you know, he's only a couple of minutes away from standing.
Where does he need to improve the most? Is it time trialling?
Yeah,
it's like so many of these guys are time trialling. Whether he's in some ways, it's not just. There's a perception that with time trialling, it is just a case of sorting out your position and learning a bit about time trialling. But it's actually, some people are genetically better predisposed towards it. It's got to do with the way your muscles work and the amount of inertia. Essentially, how much power can you put down when you're going very quickly?
Given he comes from a bit of a track background as well, it's a little bit of a surprise actually. I thought he would be better at the time trials than he's going to prove in the last 3 weeks.
So how do you teach him then, Michael?
you can teach people a certain amount. You need to change training. I mean, one of the things that Fabian Cancellara used to do an enormous quantity of was motor pacing behind a scooter. It's that kind of thing to try to get used to riding at a high speed rather than grinding up a mountain, which is what so many of these guys are good at. And they produce big power numbers when they grind up a mountain. What they need to do is learn to produce those power numbers when the bike's already going very quickly, and that's training.
Well, as you would guess, he was full of smiles down on the Champs-Elysees as he was wearing his white jersey, and I thought, you know what, let's chat to him. Right then, you're wearing the white jersey. Anything your brother can do as well. Sibling rivalry.
Yeah, no. I watched it on TV last year when he pulled it on, so I was like, oh, I have to get it next year instead.
And what is the feeling like when you stood up there knowing you've won that jersey, your mum's here, your family's here?
Firstly, it was very daunting going up there. There's a lot of people watching. It's a big audience. But no, for sure, I was enjoying it there, really cherishing the moment. Yeah, really great.
What did your mum say to you?
Not much, just hello and finally I can see you, because it's quite difficult to get to this area over here. So no. Yeah.
And talk us what the last 3 weeks have been like for you, from the wet streets of Dusseldorf down here to Paris. What has it been like?
It's been okay. Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed it. We've had some really good moments, a few bad moments, but overall we've had a fantastic 3 weeks. The team have looked after me extremely well, and I think everything's gone to plan. We came here for the white jersey and I've arrived here, so for me it's a success.
When does that white jersey turn yellow?
I'll have to see. I'll give it a try, but maybe a few years yet at least.
So he was coy when I asked him when that white jersey turned yellow. Jill would like to know if either of the brothers are now mature enough to win yellow, to win a Grand Tour. If not yellow, then pink or red.
Adam, last year we mentioned that he won the Best Young Riders jersey, came 4th overall in the Tour de France. Simon came 7th this year, 6th in the Vuelta last year. I think they're close.
Haven't they themselves said in the next 2 or 3 years that they would hope to maybe win one of the Grand
I think I've heard
Tours?
that. I mean, and best young rider, well, that's what the best young rider is. You graduate from that at the age of 26 and you become a contender. Of course they're good enough. Will they get the opportunities? Will they get the luck? Will they avoid illness? Will they avoid injury? Will they manage to get themselves into the right team? And all the things we were talking about when we were talking about how Chris Froome won this tour apply to Adam and Simon winning another tour at some point.
The team's a good point there, actually. You have to look at Orica or Scott, and you do wonder, are they a cutting edge Grand Tour team? There's been a lot of rumours over the last 2-3 years, basically even before they turned professional. Are the Yates brothers going to end up at Team Sky? And actually,
Sky wanted to sign one of them.
They wanted to sign Simon, didn't they?
Yeah.
He came through the British cycling system, but not Adam, who basically kind of graduated through the French ranks and the kind of the amateur scene in France. But I dare I say I can see both, if not one of them, if not both, is the correct term for that. I can see them both ending up at Team Sky, and I think that would be the best place actually for them to potentially win a Grand Tour.
I think though they would definitely physically, yes, but the team is something that I think is going to become more and more important. To get 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th in a Grand Tour, as we've seen, you can do that with a smaller team, but I think to actually win the thing, it's only a small jump, but I think it's crucial that
you need a team that can control the race. If you're finishing 3rd, 4th, 5th, you don't.
Look at Iran, 2nd place overall, but did he really have the team to cope with that?
His team hasn't had to do anything. Had he been 30 seconds ahead of Chris Froome and been in the yellow, it might have all gone pear-shaped.
Aru had that problem.
I was going to say, think about Aru and his team and that split. That's not a mistake you can afford to go around making, and that's a team issue just as much as an individual issue.
Right, we've been here, it feels like now, for months doing this, so let's wrap this up with the Pelotonis. Now, this was the online, well, it's not a competition, we did a poll, the awards, the rider awards from this year's Tour de France, which was run via the BBC Sport website and the live text, which I'm sure you've been consuming every day. Just shout the names out. Best rider, doesn't have to be the yellow jersey. Who do you think? Who's been the best rider?
Dan Martin.
Ooh.
Warren Barguil.
Kwiatkowski.
I like Kwiatkowski for the work that he's done.
Biggest disappointment. I think there's going to be a consensus here.
Nairo.
There you go.
Yeah, Nairo.
It has to be a rider. Quintana. I think biggest disappointment is probably actually the route. I don't think it can have worked for ASO.
Oh, okay. Best stage. That's an interesting. What was the best stage for you?
101 kilometres into finished. Was it Albi?
Stage 9, Mondeschat stage. I mean, it had the horrible Richie Port crash, but there was that fabulous bit where AG2R put half the team in the break, left half the team in the peloton, and then at some point, clearly the DS just yelled down the radio, right, everybody attack, everything now. It was just fantastic, and they blew the race to bits all over the road. It was terrific.
Rob Mondeschat means what in French?
Cat Hill.
I nearly said the real one.
Simon, for you, what was the best stage?
Best stage, apart from combining two sporting passions in one go, Tour de France and then the Olympique Marseille football stadium yesterday. That was I enjoyed that, the whole idea of Marseille. I liked the idea of the Foix stage, the 100-kilometre stage. I wouldn't want every stage to be like that, but I think there's a space for stages like that, because every rider gets up in the morning, no matter how hard the stage is, they look at the distance and they say, I can afford to do that. I can afford to go for it today because I know that I can ride hard for that long. That's why those stages will
French
always
stage
be good.
winner on Bastille Day. I mean, what more could you want apart from a French woman in the Tour de France? But that's another year.
Can I just butt in the biggest disappointment as well for the Tour?
That was the last one.
What?
That was the last peloton.
This is like the two Ronnie sketches, isn't it, where he's asking a question in arrears.
The wind. We bigged up the wind, the crosswinds.
Is that the royal we?
I sat there and did my homework, I did my prep, and there were about 3 stages where if the wind had blown like it was supposed to have done, the race could very well have been completely different.
Coulda, woulda,
Next
shoulda.
year, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Next year,
Beverly Knight.
Wind, please.
Okay, well, we'll get that. We'll see if ASO can sort that out. The futility jersey. So this is the person who basically did lots of stuff and got nothing from it.
Well, Thomas de Genn, because
Genn.
he should have won the combativity prize. He was at the front of the race for over 1,000 kilometres, and incredibly didn't get the combativity prize.
Unanimous.
Yeah,
That's probably unanimous.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say Kwiatkowski
Yeah.
in a different way.
Yeah. The rider not in his own team's WhatsApp group.
Buhani.
Yeah.
Well, I think everyone. When we ran this on the BBC Sport website, it was pretty much Fabio Aru. He has no friends at Astana. What were Astana doing in this Tour de France? Because they had the yellow jersey for a bit and then seemed to not want to ride for Fabio Aru.
I think of course, it went a bit wrong for them when they lost Cataldo and Fuglsang. So that, other than Aru, they're best 2 riders really. So they were a much weakened team.
You realise you can sing Fabio Aru, Where Are You, to the tune of the Scooby-Doo theme?
I've heard you. I've seen you put it on Twitter.
Don't worry.
Please.
We need to write the rest.
We're sailors.
We're doing the rest of the lyrics.
After the Broma Bardet song,
it just seems so appropriate. No, I'm not doing it.
We did try and run a thing on the BBC Sport website, which was riders' names that could go to songs, and Redders, who has been the glue that's held us together or stuck us in place at times.
Stuck us in one spot.
He came up with row, Luke, row your boat. And that was the best we came up
Very
with.
good.
He should be where we are right now. He should.
Well,
be
maybe let's bring him in just for this final bit. Redders, come on in, just for this final bit. Coming in. Maybe let's just get. Oh, he doesn't.
No, look, he's so shy.
As if. I think that's where we should leave it. It has been the most amazing 3 weeks in France. We've had highs, we've had lows.
His wife doesn't know he's a cameraman. He knows he's something completely different.
She thinks he works on an oil rig.
Yeah.
It's been the most amazing time we've had in France. It's been brilliant. This was a bit of a project to do these live Facebook shows. Has it worked? We'll leave that up to you. Thank you very much to Michael Hutchinson, to Nick Bull, to our commentary team of Rob Hales and Simon Brotherton as well. Thank you to Redders, who has done some things all right.
Dripping wet at the moment.
He is indeed. He has to stand. Come on.
He looks like a deep sea trawler.
Come in. Thank you very much to him.
He's photo-bombed all the track athletes at the Olympics.
He has indeed. Just quickly, Redders, give us your thoughts on this year's Tour de France.
Arduous.
Which is a great way to end it. Thank you very much to Gemma Sturber, to Stephen Paul, whoever he was, as well, and to Will Cooper for getting this thing on the road. And that is it. So now we can delete each other's numbers. You're all dead to me. Goodbye.
Sports with Sean Caravilles.